Close out
Okay, just bring
Facebook.
it into view. Hi, everyone.
Ready? It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been some time. Let me just adjust everything properly. It has been some time. We've been absent for a while. It seems like I needed my lights again this time, or maybe I could just like open my curtains. It's 8 p.m. here, but it looked like broad daylight.
Oh wow. Oh yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Right, so
Yes.
guys, it's Jan and I here. Jamisha will be joining us a little later. She has a webinar and
Big friend
it's
things.
Sunday, but still working on a Sunday. And that's the main reason why we haven't been around for a little bit. It's just a little difficult getting everybody pinned down. As you should know, we live in three different countries, demanding jobs, trying to maintain a healthy work life balance. So I'm still trying to do this. So, yeah, we're here this
Don't ever
Sunday.
achieving it. Don't ever achieving that.
The
But
keyword
yes.
is trying,
Yeah,
trying.
trying. Hi everyone.
So,
Give us a shout in the chat just so that we could see that everybody can hear us and let us know that the audio is okay and everything. Continue, Heidi. Sorry.
over the past few weeks, a lot has happened. For me personally, I don't know, but I know I tell everybody this. I am from Union Island, and there was a gas station fire there. Three lives were lost ultimately. One, the youngest death, a relative of mine. So we had that, and then globally and more regionally, we had the George Floyd murder, and that set off an entire series of events that were sort of just coming down from. So on top of not being able to pin down everyone, we just thought it best to not take away from the discussions that were going on surrounding race and the racism in the United States and across the globe. But today, we now is a good time to make a comeback. And we invited two gentlemen, Akley Olton from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Alex Downs from Barbados. And they've been making, I don't want to say waves, but maybe ripples
Waves. I would
in
say
their
waves even.
waves. Okay, waves. So we've invited them. They should be joining us shortly, and
Mm-hmm.
we're going to go in. We're going to have what we intend to be an open and honest discussion about race, the monuments that we've had for decades, and just what it's like to be black in the Caribbean. And of course, Jamaica can give a black in Belgium, a black in Europe experience. We also intend to touch on colorism. So this is going to be great. Just share the links, subscribe to our channel.
Yeah, we have a
We're
YouTube
live
channel.
on, we're live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So share, join in. We are monitoring the comment sections across the platforms. So just make your contribution. If you have questions for Alex and Ashley, look at that, we've got two ways. Um, If you've got questions for Alex and Akley when they join, please feel free to just ask them. Jan, you could give a little overview of Alex and his recent wave making
Yeah, so
just before they join.
Alex will say it better than I ever can, but he started an online movement, let's say, or a petition, to remove a statue of Lord Horatio Nelson from Bridgetown, Barbados, in the central square, and he would probably explain a lot more about the history of Lord Horatio Nelson and how he came to decide that this is something that he wanted to start, or this is a movement that he wanted to start. And most recently, he would have actually led a protest in front of this statue. I believe it was last week, Saturday. Here comes Alex. Oh, right on time. So, yeah, but he will probably explain even better than I can about, his thoughts leading up to starting this petition. By the way, right before Alex joined, we're Wine and Chat One on Twitter.
There we go.
Alex!
What's happening? Long time no see.
Hey, long
Hey,
time.
it's been a while. It's been a
Yeah, it's
while.
been a while. Alex and I go way back actually because when I was studying at KVille, I actually met Alex and we became very close friends, and we're still good friends to this day. So yeah, right before you join, I was just giving a bit of a rundown about your movement. But I said that you would introduce it much better than I can, and you could give like
Oh,
your thoughts and thinking of what led you to the moment of starting this movement.
I guess I'll start with the beginning. This was, I think it was about a month ago or so that, I was just sitting down at home and I guess like everyone else, I was seeing what's happening in the US, Black Lives Matter, this whole movement. And I think we had two protests in Barbados, which was just, Black Lives Matter and so on. And I was asking myself, like, yo, this is important, but like for us in Barbados, like we have things that we need to address for ourselves. And what are those things? And so I started thinking on, you know, Nelson statue is probably one of the oldest, like, points of contention. It's a statue in Bridgetown of like Lord Horatio Nelson, who was an admiral during the times of like, transatlantic slave trade. And I just thought, like, I asked some of my friends, I was like, y'all feel like people are like getting behind the petition, though? Y'all feel we could. And the thing is, this is something that's been done before. We've talked about it before. So I was like, man, I don't know, but nothing gets done if no one does anything. So I started petition, and in less than 24 hours, I think we had like 1,000 plus, and by the end of the week, it was over 10,000. And I mean, it's been rumbling since then. So yeah, that's just really how I started.
Wow.
Wow,
Do you
interesting.
think you've gotten support mainly from local Barbadians or persons in the diaspora?
So this is a funny bit. I started it on Twitter. I'm not a
Uh-huh.
Facebook person. I use Instagram sometimes, but I'm just a Twitter person. So I just put it on Twitter. And my friends over time, they're more Facebook people and so on. They're like, yo, we need to make a page, we need to push this thing. I was like, all right, cool. And I started getting like my IG's locked, but I started getting requests from people, and eventually
Mm-hmm.
opened it. And it was like so many people from not just here in Barbados, but across the world that were like, oh, I'm so glad to see somebody doing something. Like, I support you on this. Let me know how I can help. So, it's like I got people from the UK, people from the US, um, people from as far as like in Asia. They're just literally living overseas who are like, bro, I bought this thing. I started not home to help. And so I was just like, whoa, like, I mean, it's good to see people here in Barbados who live it and breathe it, but people overseas as well. So it's been
Just
interesting.
Wow.
just backtracking a little bit for those who are watching who probably never been to Barbados or don't know much about Barbados or the statue, if you could just give like a brief overview of where the statue is located.
Okay, statue is located in what's currently called National Hero Square, formerly Trafalgar Square, and it's literally in the heart of Bridgetown. It's opposite the Parliament buildings. It's right next to, what we would call the wharf, the Creage. Um, yeah, so it's been there since like 1813 or so, couple of like 200 years plus. And as I said, it's of Lord Horatio Nelson, who was an admiral in the British Navy at the time. And what we've been told in Barbados, I guess, just to get into that bit, what we've been told in Barbados is that this guy has been a hero to the Barbadians. This is why he has a statue. Like, I mean, you go hearing it, he saved us from the French. He fought in the Battle of Trafalgar, and if not for him, Barbados would be a French colony. And, when you do study the history,
Yes.
he didn't fight for Barbados. He literally did not like Barbados. It just is that Barbados was an English colony and so on and so forth. So that's just really how it started. And, also on top of that, he was also anti-abolitionist. And so as you study your history, you understand that Barbados, he was not for the freedom of slaves. And so you ask yourself, why is this statue here? Like, we are past 50 plus years of independence. Why are we still, in National Hero Square? And, the most they did actually a couple of years ago, the statue faced into Bridgetown. And what they did is that they just turned it face out of Bridgetown. I guess as some symbolism to say, like, you're no longer, I don't know. So yeah, that's really history.
Welcome, Akley. You're muted. I don't know if you know.
Yes, I noticed. Good evening. How you doing?
Good evening. Yes. Welcome.
I apologize for being a few minutes late. It's not because of island time. I passed that, but I had some technical issues, so just forgive me.
Oh, we know about those all too well.
Oh yes, definitely.
Okay, good.
We were just chatting with Alex about
it's nice.
His role and his movement so far. Yes, you were saying, sorry.
Okay. Oh no, I was just saying it's just nice to see you guys and to be a part of this conversation, especially from the point of view of Vinci. Like, you guys know that we don't have lots of platforms for this kind of talk. So I just wanted to, say thank you and commend you to, keep it going.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. And let's jump right in. We just heard from Alex on how movement regarding Lord Horatio Nelson's statue. And over the past few weeks, we noticed that you've been making a little bit of a push regarding the cenotaph in Kingstown. So can you give us a little background about where your feelings came from and how you got to the conclusion that you got to?
Well, well, the first thing I would say is it's not just my feeling or a conclusion that I came to, and it's not something that happened that just emerged right now. There is a informal general consensus, I guess, amongst left-thinking Vincentians, like Rastafarian movement and other kind of people who think in a nationalistic way in Vinci, who have expressed over the years that down with the Iron Man and they don't want, this colonial representation, so it's not the first person. I could name persons as well who have been over the years, like saying things, to get rid of the Iron Man and what the Iron Man represents for them. And in the recent timeline, I think the first time I said something about the Iron Man was in 2017, which was like right after I came home from Cuba, and it was, it was because of that journey and I guess becoming more in tune with the development of the identity of a Caribbean nation state that's independent. That like things started looking strange to me. Just like going and coming back into your community, you see things that I mean, it's always been a part of you, but it looks different to you now for some reason. It's like your eyes get open, and the Iron Man for me represents a sort of I treat aesthetic in a political way. The dominant aesthetic that exists in our whole paradigm, our whole consciousness, especially in the West, is it's led by whiteness, where the symbols that you take from whiteness represents, the power above, and the darker symbols represents the oppressed or the negative energy, So so that because I've studied art in for a few years, and I understand the whole journey of Western art and how it was transplanted into our countries as part of the
Mm-hmm.
colonizing process. And I guess it's what informs the main root of our culture, because we just talk English, and whatever colony you go to, it's still you're speaking a language from a European cosmopole.
Yep.
And with that language comes life. And the thing that is most interesting for me is how image communicates.
Mm-hmm.
So I see image as a language, and you go through the history books, and you see the same images, and the people who painted these images are also the colonizers. You don't see the images that were created by us or the other people who were here. You don't see that as the credited source of information. So I'm just trying to give you some context on why I think aesthetics is very political. And then you come to Vinceland, and I mean, we could do a comparison with Barbados, but you come to Vinceland and you look around the island and you see things. And I guess the most striking thing is how well the people today live with the past, how closely they live with the past, but in a kind of nonchalant way where you don't really acknowledge it, and you maintain a kind of there's a kind of sick sophistication that doesn't make sense. It's like it's weird. But I guess the thing that explained it a lot to me was Fenner's black skin, white mass. The idea of people playing the role that was left for them by the colonial structure. So they step into the offices, or they step into the spaces, and they take on the function of the space. So
Mm-hmm.
they don't necessarily affect it and change it with the identity of the identity that may have grown out of the space in an organic way. You
Right.
maintain the structure. Where you hear it, protocol has been established, or madam this and madam that, or the guys put
God
on their
save the
fancy wig.
queen.
And oh, yo, the
Oh
other
my
day,
god.
they recruited some new police officers in Vinci, like 100 of them, and I had a job to go and take photographs of the ceremony. And Miss Duggan, bless her heart, she's wonderful, and I was happy to see a woman in that position of power in our country. But then when they started to read the pledge and they made the policeman pledge to the Queen of England, I was like, is this 2020? Am I real? Is this
Really.
is this for real? And is it me alone? Because nobody else seems to be confused by it. So the Iron Man comes from that spare for me,
Mm-hmm.
that thinking, and I just wanted to confront it. I am not necessarily saying I want to remove it. I
Right.
wanted to I wanted to use the opportunity to start a conversation, and the conversation is about confronting colonialism and how we live with it.
Right.
And
So let me just jump in at this point.
mhm.
Alex, I think I saw you on Twitter saying that you don't want the statue destroyed, but rather you want it to be moved to a museum. Is that correct?
Right. So the things with this statue, like I said, it's been a
Mm-hmm.
point of contention. We've had like commissions, um, we've had protests, and the thing is with it, we've had this discussion and recently as well, because similar to what I don't want to call you Island Rebel, but I was going to
Actually.
Actually,
say, right.
you
Right. What's happened is that we've had this whole movement recently of young people who've had the experience of talking to the older folks who are more open-minded in terms of moving away from the colonial past that we have. And I think it's been this shift along with the Black Lives Matter to finally say, look, those of you who are in power, maybe you come from that generation where God save the queen, you're so happy that this and that. We ain't from that school. We're from a different school where we understand the culture and the very essence of blackness, and
Mm-hmm.
that's all we ask for. And I think it's one of the things that is pretty funny. We had a meeting with I had a meeting with the Minister of Culture. There's been this whole
Oh
discussion with
wow.
him some months ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And for those who may not know, he made statements essentially saying that he was not in favor of, XYZ as regards
Yes.
to the statue. The statue, for me, for many people, represents the colonial past. The actual location of where the statue is standing right now it used to be a former slave market. After the slaves came off the greenage, they were sold in that area. And so it's almost a slap in our faces. And I told him up front, I am not advocating for the destruction of these. This is a part of the Barbadian history, like it or don't. That's entirely your discussion. My point is, historically and currently, it stands in National Hero Square. It cannot be. Someone who is anti-abolitionist cannot stand in a country that's 95% black. People made the point that, this is in the country, and I said, I'm fine with that. But that doesn't mean I have to celebrate something that's bad. For those who may from a different ethnicity, there are heroes within those groups that we can celebrate as well. But this person is not who we are, who we want to be as a country. And so I made a suggestion. If you want to see it, you can pay. I go and see it in the museum. I do not want to see it. I don't care for it. And I said to him quite openly, you have a position right now that you can make a change without it having to go to that direction. We've seen in different countries, people taking it upon themselves and destroying the statues, removing them. I said, you have the opportunity to listen to the people and do something about it. If it gets to that point, you can only blame yourself. And I told him I would not stop. If someone says to me, I'm going to put on that statue, no. All right? I'm not going to stop you. I may help you. That's the way I feel about it. Being honest, he said to me, in the meeting we had, he said, because I told him I was disappointed with his statements. He said, well, look, I'm in favor of taking it down. Because what was so hurtful, he's a Pan-Africanist. He's one of those guys, the one person you thought would understand. He's that guy. And so when he said that, I was like, I don't get it, John King. You sang about the struggles of the black people he was a Calypsonian before. You sang about the struggles of the black people. So why are you now making these kind of statements? And when I sat with him, I told him, look, maybe you're saying we misunderstood. I don't think we did. I legit think that you said something that's out of turn. And it's not for you, if you are saying that that's wrong, to explain to the public where you stand and where you stand, that you stand with us, which is what he said. So he said all he was saying is he didn't want it to be destroyed as well. If it goes in a museum, fine. If it goes into an underwater museum, naval museum, whatever the case, he just doesn't want it destroyed. I said, as I told you guys, I said to him, that is a matter for you guys to discuss. The point is, that's a discussion that can come after the fact it's removed. In this place, you can put, we have black Barbadians that are creatives. We have people who can have designed statues, monuments, have something that reflects the struggles or maybe the place that we're going as a people. We have 10 national heroes, have a monument for them. We have people who are not considered national heroes, like Nanny Grigg, for example. Make a statue for her. There's so many things we can do to create a positive mindset. And, that's really what I put to him and I put to the other leaders of the country.
So let me jump in right then, go back to the 10 national heroes, because we have one.
One.
My boy. He's strong though. He's strong. He's a strong one. He's strong enough.
So Alex, I don't know. Sorry to cut you off, please. I don't know if you heard, but in the Anglican Cathedral in Kingstown is buried in the center aisle of the church. Is buried the man that murdered our national hero, Joseph Shattu. Alex looking like, bruh.
The funny thing about this conversation that is so strange, and it comes back to something that Akley was saying with us living in this kind of juxtaposition or kind of filling the shoes of the colonial framework that was left behind for us. I understand in the United States that there are these two forces and they're trying to fight against each other because there's the white majority and there's the black minority. They both arrived at the same time, but the black minority is fighting for voice. The thing that frustrates me so much is that here in the Caribbean, supposedly so many of us are independent. And why did we want this independence? Because we wanted our own voice, we wanted to carve our own paths. And still, for some reason, a place where we have basically our own freedom to decide that, okay, we don't want, for example, something like this statue in our faces every day, there's still this huge pushback. To me, it kind of speaks to something deeper, that maybe we're not as independent as we think we are.
I think it's part and parcel of the same problem. We talk about transatlantic slave trade as more of a physical thing, people being disenfranchised and so on. But that mental aspect still lingers, whether it's colorism or the other aspects of colonialism that come with it. And so, like, when I speak to the older folks, sometimes, like, I've had these discussions recently, because I'm not the first person. There are historians like Dr. Trevor Marshall who have they've fought this thing for decades. And when I speak to them and some older folk, some of them say to me, I don't really care, you know, like, I find it there, I can leave it there, it don't matter to me. Then there's some of them are like, why you want to change? This is our history, you know, like, why you want to tear down our history? And I'm like, because it's history doesn't make it right. And for the last however long we've been living with this literal shadow. But let me put it like this, right? For those of you who may not be from Barbados, the National Hero Square, say it's right here, the statue faces that way. We have the Treasury building, which is right in front of it, and National Heroes Day, we put a picture of all the national heroes on the Treasury building. So literally they're just looking at each other. And I just stand up like nobody don't no recognize we're wrong with this. This man literally wanted us to remain enslaved, you know. Like if this man had his way, we would not be free, we would not be leaders, we would not be people running this country. And yet is this whole furrow about should we take it down? What is it going to mean for us as a people? I'm like, man, I don't know. I don't know, man. It's really it's hurtful.
So Alex, I want to be a little bit of devil's advocate because you know it's necessary, and then there's this conversation that we need to have about where St. Vincent is in its journey to true nationalism and its independence journey in comparison to Barbados. You know, like we're all at different levels because we had different points of departure, different mix, and so one of the most shocking things for me, because I went to Caveville as well, so I was in Barbados for 3-4 years. So one of the most shocking things for me was, you know, coming from the airport and driving past Bussa, you know, like that was so powerful me as a Vinci man, you know, because I had never seen anything like that, you know, because it was a black guy like me, same context according to the history and the culture that I was taught. I was, you know. So it was really powerful to see that. And then there's another monument in Barbados in Rock Hall, which is the first free village. You know, so there's been some steps in terms of identities and marking the landscape with a symbol to say, well, this is Bajan. Not only what the white people did, but this is Bajan, you know. And in some ways, I started to find some of my own strength or discover some of my own identity as a Vincentian in Barbados because of what the culture allows, you know, the kind of ideas and the conversations in comparison to St. Vincent. So in St. Vincent, there is no, well, we have a monument to honor Chate, but it's a pole, right? Yeah, it's like a obelisk. That's what they call it, an obelisk. It's a pole, you know, like. It looks Egyptian, maybe, or whatever. And I think that's okay. Yeah.
It's a long pointed triangle.
I don't. Is it really a triangle? I thought there was like a pole. I don't know if it's like. It reminds me of the thing in Washington, you know, like the monument.
Right.
It's
that's
really
true.
small. Really small.
Yeah.
So I always, you know, and then in front of a TV station, out of reach of the people. So. Growing up, driving, walking around, you're not going to see this hero with you to feel him, to touch him, to live with him inside your space while you could drive by Bussa. You probably drive by Bussa 5 times a day, you know, because of where he's positioned.
Possibly,
so you have to see him. So you know, I thought it was important to mention that. The other thing I wanted to mention was, I guess, a comment in relation to what you were saying about, you know, heroes looking from the Parliament building to Nelson and Nelson looking back. Like even that in itself is super poetic, and I'm happy that you saw it, because another thing that's interesting about the Caribbean as opposed to North America or Africa is our closeness to state power as a black nation, as a nation that became black, is close we come to ruling state power or to wielding state power. And you have to understand that education in the Caribbean was created for the plantation people to educate their children. And they wanted their children to have the best education as any young person in England or wherever, they wanted it to be comparable. So our journey as melanated people coming through the education system, was a journey of excellence where you had to be like the exceptional one to be
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
selected to be a
yeah.
part of it.
Yep.
And then there was a sort of pressure that came with that, because in the school you're one thing, and then when you go back home you represent another thing, and you have to like balance it out and get to a certain place. And that in itself created, well, lots of people call it the golden generation, which is, the CLR James, and the beautiful poem of Lamming, and these really powerful visionary minds. And it was because of how we access information, right? So those guys on the building looking at Nelson, it's a very interesting conversation still, because it says we're confronting each other and forging our way forward, right?
That's the
And
thing. Oh, continue. Sorry.
well, no, I would like that conversation at least to happen in my country, which was the whole point of making. That was the point I wanted to
Yeah.
make. I want to
Yeah.
get where you're at. I want to be able to talk, to have
But
a Chateau Disso and an Iron Man, and see
Yeah.
how it goes. But it's just to share where we are as a Caribbean as well.
Mm.
It's a big challenge, but I guess we have things that we share in terms of the elements. But
It's interesting because I think about 3 years ago, Janika passed through Martinique, I think, and she
Mhm.
visited a museum where she saw, I don't know, an excerpt from some book saying that the French and the British done
Yeah, it
basically
was.
had to give up
Mhm.
because, right, go ahead.
Yeah, so what I saw when I went to Martinique, and funny enough, it was the first time that I encountered anything like this, and it was in Martinique, so bear that in mind. But anyways, it was basically a transcription of a real letter written by, I can't remember the name of the actual person, but it's somebody from the French colonial times, a lord or one of these things. And basically he was writing a letter saying it was a peace treaty between the French and the savages, he called them, which is actually just the indigenous people of the Caribbean, but they had this habit of painting them as savages. And basically he just spoke about like the difficulties that he had in coming to peace and the difficulties that he had in colonizing. Specifically, he mentioned the two islands that were very difficult: St. Vincent and Dominica. Apparently the Caribs that were there were just so terrible. Every time they tried to enter, they were attacking them. So they
Bad.
couldn't, yeah, they were bad.
Mm.
They were bad. So they couldn't get to settle at all, and it was causing a lot of havoc, let's say, with them, because they had successfully settled other islands at that time. From the letter, this is what you could gather, that they had successfully settled other islands, but these savages, they just couldn't, get to overturn. And so they came to an agreement that, okay, the savages, the Caribs, said, all right, here's what. We will stop attacking you if you promise to leave us alone. Like, stop trying to invade our island. We're here, we're living good. Leave us alone. You have to promise that what you've done to these other islands, you will never do it to us. I mean, obviously, in the end, it didn't work out, but this was quite late down in the game. Promise that you will never colonize us. Promise that you'll never colonize Dominica. And they also listed a few other islands that they didn't want them to colonize. And they say, not only you, the French people, but also the British people, leave us alone and you will get your peace. And so the guy was writing about that, and he said that he also mentioned Christ. He said that he asked them if it would be possible, okay, we won't invade you, but how about if we send some missionaries to teach you about Christ? Would you be okay with that? And apparently they said no. And he mentioned some other things that he wanted to change about the savages. But essentially he just couldn't get through. And so this was the peace treaty. It's super interesting. I could share it on my Facebook after, but it was very eye-opening.
You know what's kind of interesting about that as well? It's like,
I said, sorry, Alex, just before
That's
you
cool.
go in, I said that to say that it's interesting St. Vincent's current position now regarding nationalism and colonialism in comparison to Barbados, who seems to have maybe embraced their blackness a little bit more. And St. Vincent and Grenadines coming from an era where we had Joseph Chatouille. As far as I know, he was one of the most feared leaders in the region at that time. So now it's like the coin has flipped, the tables have turned. The Garifuna and Vincent and Grenadines are basically they've been set apart from the rest of the community. They're living in these northern villages. I'm not sure that we fully understand or we fully embrace the importance that those people played in where we are as a community today. And I understand Akley in saying, we don't have a Chateau monument to drive past. We have an Iron Man to drive past. And perhaps that does reinforce, this whole maybe they're savages kind of thinking. Because I know personally, people still make jokes about the local Garifuna people.
Oh yes.
We don't see them as equals. We tend to see them as less than.
Yes.
And
less civilized.
there's an argument, exactly. There's an argument to be had that the cenotaph with the Iron Man, his placement isn't necessarily bad per se, given that the intent was to honor Vincentian soldiers who fought in I think, the First World War.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, we're celebrating us fighting for our colonizers, yet we've sort of restricted our true hero, the one who fought for us as a people. We've restricted him to this mountaintop placement where nobody ever sees. And I'm not sure that we teach the history of Joseph Chatouille in school, because I don't recall learning about Chatouille. This was a while ago. It might have forgotten something.
I had
If
to.
I
Yeah, no, go ahead. No,
no, you go ahead.
I was just
You go
gonna
ahead.
mention.
I just was very excited.
I was just gonna mention that I had to write I distinctly remember because I had to go to the library and I took out a book and I had to write on Chate. And one more thing before you speak, Akley, Maxine said, indigenous people from every country/continent have been and still are called savages, especially when defending and protecting their land. And Crystal Kennedy says, every year the Christians come back home and complain the honoring of the cenotaph is devil worship. Oh my God.
Say what now?
You were saying
the honoring of this. Who says that? The Christians say the honoring of the cenotaph or the obelisk? Which one? The Chatouille one or the
obelisk?
Oh,
I think
the obelisk.
she meant.
Okay.
maybe she,
Okay.
maybe she meant the obelisk. Yeah, maybe she meant that one because they have all the indigenous dances that they do in front of it, and I guess that's devil worship. You could let me know, Crystal. But you were saying.
But she said cenotaph, but she meant obelisk.
Maybe.
To not be confused about both.
Maybe.
Anyway,
So yeah,
you said a lot of things, Heidi. Like you hit a lot of points about how we live with our past. And yes, we grew up with a kind of stigma towards the people that live in the north, the people that, with the silky hair and the red skin. There's all kind of things that we say about them, from the danga joke, I don't know if you know about danga, Janika.
No, I don't know about that.
So there was a airplane crash up at Sandy Bay off the coast, and the debris had canisters of coolant, of air conditioner coolant. And the story that I heard is that the canister said danger, but however the people from that community read it, they pronounced it danga, and then they drank it and start to, they say they drink it and they get drunk and it was the most delicious, cool, some kind of thing. But this was one of the stories to explain how stupid the people were that live up at the north. and how they don't understand English. And you know, we have it in our society, you know, like we have some people, like I've heard people say to me, you know, I can't talk Creole, I can't talk dialect.
And they feel
And
good.
you know, like even no, I mean, but it's about where does that thinking comes from, and why is it even okay to express it? Because you're expressing something that is alienating the most original part of you, which is like schizophrenia, in my opinion. So you know, like I always I you know, right, so that was one part about how we live with the indigenous people in St. Vincent. There's also the sexual jokes, you know, about carib woman easy, and you could get two for plenty and whatever. And you know, they have all kind of things that they say about the indigenous people here in St. Vincent that we don't see among the melanated ones. So we definitely have to confront that, and part of the confrontation would be honoring, you know, the image of the hero, which, you know, his facial features would look more like them, maybe, you know what I mean. So it would give power to them to see a person that resembles them being honored, you know. So there's a lot
Interesting.
of things, we need to confront, because yeah, you do your thing. um I think that's it. You made another point, Heidi, but
If I could
too
just
much
jump
too
in,
much
because
ideas.
I hear
Right.
you guys I hear y'all. It's so interesting because, like, I mean, obviously here in Barbados, we don't have an
It's fine.
indigenous population to
Mm-hmm.
necessarily speak of.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really has come down to, just to put it bluntly, it's really come down to black and white. Like, there
Mm-hmm.
are other groups, but you know, I'd say those are the main two, you know, power groups that you see.
Mm-hmm.
And we've always had this underlying understanding that there are few whites, but they hold the majority of the financial and economic power, and there are many blacks, and we just make it the majority of the country. And it's almost, we always hear about this tale of like two Barbadoses. So they never really clash. You never really can have this, you know, head on, like, but they can always just exist side by side somehow. And I mean, like here there's been a lot of work done by, you know, like guys like David Comajong. Like we've had David and so many Pan Africanists who fought this fight. I mean, even like the what we call it, the Buster statue, Emancipation statue. That was put up in 1985, and that came after years and years of like the Pan Africanists just pushing. Like, you know, this is the 1816 Bailey's Rebellion. Man had over 400 people, the largest revolt in Barbados. I mean, it wasn't successful in that sense. But I mean, afterwards, you had revolts in like Demerara, you had revolts in Jamaica. And it's like, we pushed for this thing. And it finally came up. And I mean, for us living here, it's almost like going to the beach. You know, sometimes when I get at home, I don't go to the beach because the beach there. Like, you know what I mean? But when people come to Barbados, they're like, bro, this beach ridiculous. So like, with Buster statue, I can play past it. But it's only when you stop or someone who's not from here to see it and they're like, bro, you know how powerful that is, the
Mm.
statue? And you think about things. I'm like, we're in a country where we live in this kind of like just position that we accept as a norm. We have a Buster statue, but then we have a Lord Nelson statue. It's like the two, if these people were here in the flesh, they would not stand next to each other and coexisting. So it's like we need to decide, are we A, are we B, or are we C? Are we our past in terms of this legacy that Nelson had? Are we our past in terms of we always fighting the fight at Bussafall? Or we went in a direction where we were seeing, look, you can acknowledge the past, but that doesn't mean you have to celebrate those aspects of it. And that's my position with the Nelson statue. I'm not saying to not acknowledge whatever occurred. It did happen, but that doesn't mean you have to celebrate as, like, you know, we have this discussion sometimes here. I don't know how true it is, but some people are like, oh, you know, the tourists, they love to come and they love to see the original Nelson statue, because there's one in England as well in Chicago. It's that one. And so they're always like, oh, you know, this is historic. We should keep it in Barbados, you know, British town, so the tourists can come. I cannot feel comfortable knowing that, like, you know, tourists from Metropole, from England, from Europe, white tourists are coming to Barbados where their ancestors literally killed my ancestors. And being like, look, something's familiar. It's not great. No, I'm not. I ain't comfortable with it. So, I mean, it's just to say, like, I heard you guys talking about, you know, with the obelisk and that kind of stuff. I honestly feel bad saying it. I've never been to St. Vincent. John, you know that. I need to go. I need to go.
You
but
do.
I need to
Don't
come.
just
I
he
need
knows.
to come. I know. But just hearing you guys talking about, you know, where we are in Barbados and where you guys are, I know that takes a lot of work. and it's going to take a lot of work. Because even for us to this day, we still struggle with some things that I think we as a people shouldn't. But it's a process. Like I tell people, it's not usually an event; it's a process. And so I just want you guys, look, keep pushing. You can get there. Just gotta keep pushing, man.
So I completely agree with you. I mean, it's a process, and it's about what we do in moments like these and how we are able to connect to the times to extend ideas to our different nations or masses. Um, what was it that I wanted to say? You had said something, Heidi, about is it that Barbados identifies with a blacker blackness than Vinci? Like you had said something like that.
Yes,
And
yes, yes.
I just wanted to respond to that and also respond to Alex at the same time about conversations you may have had with older folks, our uncles and aunties who were part of this movement way before us, and actually on whose shoulders we stand, because
True.
standing up on their shoulders literally. Like we have this freedom to have this conversation across the region right now because of,
Their
what
work.
they did. Yeah, exactly. So I just wanted to like put that in there as well. Um, so Heidi, I went down to the Anglican Church Friday. I didn't go
Mm-hmm.
Heritage Square. I didn't go to Heritage Square to Lime. I go to the Anglican Church, and I was up in there because I didn't know that Chatier's name was inscribed in the church floor. I don't care about the other man. I went to see Chatier's name
Okay.
that was inscribed in this rock from 200 years ago. So I
Right.
wanted to go see it. I go down, I see this guy. I didn't want to be like cause a ruckus and pull up the carpet. I go and
Mm.
I ask, well, if there's a format, if there's a way that I could see it, and immediately I get no. I run things here. I's the man that running it, and no. And when I really look, it was a uncle. It was an uncle about 60, 70 years old, and I mean, I guess he's the groundsman or whatever. And
Right.
we understand education and communication in St. Vincent is a coefficient. So people may not know how to communicate their ideas, and they just say things how they could say it, which is you ain't going to look under that carpet there. I said, all right. So we started to talk about it, and then another gentleman came in who happened to be a little bit more communicative, and we started talking, and he said, when I was younger and maybe about your age, this was the 60s. We rise up, and we was out in the street right here, so protesting. And we rose up and we said, let we tear down this whole building. And something else happened because I saw after that our leaders, the leaders of our Black Power movement here in St. Vincent, I saw that they started to take off their dashikis and put on jacket and tie, and and well, the thing that he said that was most powerful was one of the guys who was his leader. His father had died, and he came. He said his father had died, and the funeral happened in the same Anglican church. And the guy who became a leader of the nation said, "My father wanted to be buried in a Christian church, and that's what I have to give him." And from that story, I got two things. I got that the first wave of this global Black Lives Matter was way more powerful than our wave right now. It was way more vicious. The time may have demanded it because people like us would have been more restricted. So the response to break that restriction was way more violent, way more drastic. And these feelings that we are having, which feels like anguish and all kind of things and oppression, like it has happened before. And
Mm-hmm.
and it's not to belittle that it's happening now. It's just to say that you just need to recognize that you are a part of a very big process, or we're a part of a very big process. And I think right now it's not so much about breaking things and smashing things, but about conversation.
Yeah.
Because what we want to do is create a future. And I too recognize the Caribbean as a mixed space. I know it's predominantly black, and if any of you out there have any other ideas, the Caribbean is a black space. and but there are other people here too. And the thing that sets us apart from the Africans and from the North Americans is that because of this space of the island, the physical space, right? the different manifestations of freedom that were allowed to manifest over the years had a strong relationship with the space. In St. Vincent, we had mountains so people could hide out.
Yeah.
Hence, you had a big militia in the mountains that could attack the colonials.
Yeah.
That was because of land. While in Barbados, it's completely flat, so the
Mm-hmm.
entire place was colonized because you couldn't defend yourself anywhere. There's also a story I heard about when the colonials showed up in Barbados. They met an empty island. Like the indigenous people who were there retreated into other places, and I believe it's Vinci because there's a current that connects
Yeah.
Vinci to BIM.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe there's a few, like we have a strong tie these two islands.
Mm-hmm.
So it's in kind of wrapping up. It's not to say that one place is blacker than the other. Again, it's about recognizing St. Vincent too wasn't didn't have slavery as long as Barbados.
Yeah.
And what does that mean for the population that became the Vincentians in relation to the Bajans? Like, what does that mean? You know, so I just like to explore things a little bit more. I guess it's like anthropological. Like, I want to be there. I want to live in the times, and see how these correlations add up to today. Before. So it's not really about breaking things down. It's more about understanding and building a future where everybody is comfortable. Everybody who love the white people, who love the black people, the red woman, the Caribs, everybody. Like, you know. So that's what I wanted to say.
You
I can just
mentioned.
add.
Oh no, go ahead,
Oh, sorry,
Alex.
go
No,
ahead.
you go.
Right.
See Heidi
I
gone.
just like this is my I don't know if it's closing point or whatever the case may be, but it's just so much like what you were saying there. Like I've had people approach me like, man, I hear you in this petition and you talking, let me just go do this. No. I just say, look, I say I believe in process, right? Like
Mhm.
my fathers, my grandfathers, my great grandfathers, they went through a different process than I went through because they had to go through it. They had to fight for things so I could be where I am right now. I said I believe I'm in a country where that we can have these discussions. And as I said to the Minister of Culture, we can have these discussions. We should have these discussions. But it's like don't take these things for granted that people are so, calm and relaxed, ready to discuss to the end of the lifetime, that it wouldn't go back to the ways prior. It's your job as a leader to ensure that doesn't occur. And like, I mean, with this petition, like I said, we got like 10, it's maybe like 11,000 now, but the point was 10,000. I had written a letter to the Prime Minister, sent it to her saying, well, listen, this is where we are right now, right? You got a portion of your population that want to see this thing gone. At the very minimum, you should engage with people to see how we feel. And she had responded to it, like she spoke about it because they discussed it in Parliament, Cabinet, and so on. And essentially, she was saying that there was need for consultation on this particular matter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful for the fact that, unlike other people in those leadership positions, she didn't just shoot it down. But my thing really is like, when you looking to do these other things, when you're looking to build hotels on spaces and develop lands, you get consultation. You don't really like ask how the people feel about it. You're all in government, do these things, and people have objections to them, and it's like, oh yeah, I hear you, but cool. So it's like, no, you have a situation for decades. You've had people discussing this thing. It's been a point. Listen, a couple of weeks ago when the petition started, somebody spray painted the racist and attacked me down by the statue.
Right.
A couple of years ago, somebody threw blue and yellow paint putting international colors. This thing clearly causing a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, now you decide that out of everything else, you want to have consultation. And I just hope it's not the kind of consultation that, it's in a process for the next 5 years. We can talk about it. And then something that's going to happen and you can forget. I'm like, we're in a space right now that, for me, is the first real Black wave movement since the 60s. When you had in the 50s and 60s in the States, you had the civil rights movement. You had a whole host of Caribbean countries getting independence. There was a wave of Black consciousness that I think really starting to return to this day, whether it be in Europe, whether it be in the Caribbean, even as far as like Australia. I see like Black Lives Matter like protests. And I asked one of my friends down there, like, I was in Australia. Honestly, I had that many Black people. I could go whole week without seeing one Black person. So what's the deal? They're like, yeah, but like for us Black, we really think about as like indigenous. We really think about as like the Aboriginal people.
The Aborigines.
And they're like, they're so disenfranchised. And like, so when I thought about it, I was like, in their perspective, I could see what they're saying. And like you get this consciousness just going across the world. I said to like to all the leaders, Barbados don't operate by itself. Y'all like to talk about globalization and CARICOM and the world being connected. We are part of something and we can't ignore it. So you got to understand how the people feel and respond to it as well. So just in that whole like notion of, like I said, the consciousness and like where we are and where we're looking to go. I think that's a discussion that needs to happen throughout all the islands. Like no matter if you're in the north, south, west, what we doing going forward? You can't operate as like businesses now. So that's just my, I guess, last point on that.
You know, you've made an interesting point, and I say that because we are majority Black societies, yet we see in the US, for example, where it's a white dominated society. They've been taking steps to remove certain monuments, rename buildings, etc. So really and truly, what is our issue? Why are we to take these steps? Who's going to beat us with a big stick?
But even
really
the Minister of Culture's response told me when I read it in Barbados that he still feels that his hand is still being forced by some external power. Instead of him thinking about how removing this statue is gonna affect me as a Black Bajan, his first response was, oh, but tourists come to see it. Oh, but there are white people in Barbados. To me, his response was very apologetic to the external power, let's say, or the minority. So it comes back to even what Akley said as well, that even though, and I think Alex mentioned it as well, and we all mentioned it, even though we are like quote unquote independent and we are in these Black majority countries where we have the power to do whatever we want, it still seems like we still don't have it. Physically we have it, politically we have it, but mentally we don't.
Listen, just to add what you're saying, John, I tell people we've been independent as a group of countries for the last 50 odd years or so. And at that time, we've had to navigate so many challenges, not just, mental, physical, like both natural as well. And there's so many things we've had to deal with in a quick time. But I'm like, to suggest that when I speak to this older group, I said like something as recent as the situation in Jamaica where the insignia, the artist.
Oh, the insignia, yeah.
It's like, where a white man stand on a Black man neck. I never knew that, but I must not understand that has been that way for the last however long.
Yeah.
And people leave this badge and it was okay. Like me thinking about it, if I had ever received this badge as a badge of honor, I would have looked at it like, dog, you can't give that.
Can I ask if you really would have looked at it and say what the hell going on? Or if you would have been lost in the moment because you might have been meeting the Queen or doing this, or you have a big accolade. Like,
I ain't gonna lie to you. My face is giving my thing. I would have looked at it like, what is supposed to mean? Like, legit, I personally, I tell you the truth, I might not have looked at the Queen and be like, I would not answer that. But my face would have been
like, well, that image wasn't so shocking to me because, like I say, if you go through the entire movement of like European art, which is Western art, like if you study it, like you'll see that exact image. Like it's when Lucifer falls down and Michael steps on him, and that created the whole thing. But everything is like that. And then the code of Black in relation to white is in all the images, and these images have this crazy value because it's it's how they have maintained their idea of reality. That's why these images dollars for painting.
And I think that really answers the point then of like where we are. It's like these things exist in so many different layers of our society. I mean, if you even remove the whole Black versus white kind of like discussion, like I said earlier, color, like the whole color discussion, that's still a thing. That's still a thing, lighter skin you can get through easier, and it's like we almost accept it as a norm. Like I can tell you, when I was going to primary school, they used to call me dark dog. I was dark man. Because it's like, boy, you dark, boy, like you after midnight. You know what I mean? I used to feel bad. People used to make fun of it. I mean, now it's a little different because people's like, Black skin is beautiful and everything. And I'm glad to see that. But it's like, I know these things still exist because when I look at the younger generations, I still hear the same things being repeated. Or you like skin, you hear wavy, your hair tough. I'm like, these things get so embedded in our mindsets that it's so hard to remove it. And I tell people sometimes you become so comfortable with pain that that's all you want. That's all you know. So moving away from it is like, we were having this discussion, me and my friends, about the riots in the States. And they were like, man, it's wrong. You shouldn't burn down stuff. Like, why would you burn down your home? I see, that's kind of like saying if you were enslaved, don't burn down the plantation, we just work here. It's that you gotta understand sometimes you want something so bad that you know you have to make a change. That change may be traumatic, but you need to make that change. So I think that's something why it's so difficult for the older folk to move away from this whole narrative of God save the queen, of blah 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 blah, all that nonsense. So
But you
And
mentioned the
it
light
took a
skin.
minute for
No.
me. Oh, go ahead with the light skin because it's a whole other. So go
No,
ahead
just a
before we go
point
down
on
that
the
other road.
just a point on the light skin. I wanted to expose because I knew it was something in St. Vincent, but I didn't realize it was so widespread in the Caribbean. In the banking system, in order to get a job as a teller, you had to have light skin. Isn't that crazy?
Oh boy.
And I realized
Well, it's
through
been like that
Twitter.
traditionally, right?
Yes, but I realized through Twitter that it's not just St. Vincent. I've heard Jamaicans say it. I think it's a thing in Barbados as well. Like it seems like all throughout the Caribbean. And I just wanted to say it out loud so we could all think about how stupid that is. Okay, that's it.
It's the things that we have inherited, like I said, the people who would have had access to education growing up at the beginning would have been light skinned, and then it would have been the mulattoes, the outside picnic them who could have got like a thing, and and that's how it developed, and they would have gone into the public sector and get jobs because them is this person cousin. You know how it does work in St. Vincent, just like that. Like you have to be affiliated with somebody to get something to happen, and it's all colonial bullshit. It's like crazy. But at the end of the day, it's just preventing us from moving forward. I mean, the ideas taken in the past 10 years in terms of the conversations, like all of us here are pretty much the same age, and we have grown up in the past 10 years and get educated, and now we have the scope to have this conversation. But I don't know how far we can take it if we continue to hold on to the past, because at some point you have to allow the ideas of now to take root so we could start creating the future, because your ideas brought us here, and we're grateful, Uncle. Your shoulders strong. You hold up, and now it's our time to create, the version of the future that we want to see, and and just not really get rid of it, because you can't forget it. You cannot forget what happened here, and maybe we could find ways to create situations to make the reality even more interesting for the tourists. Like in Barbados, for example, I know the Rastaman them just have a thing where they just go to a field and they just make an image of a plantation owner, like a silhouette with a hat, right? And they would burn him.
Mr. Harding.
So maybe that could be, you could merge that with Nelson, and you make a ring of fire, a bonfire, and some rastas come out, and you just chant down Nelson, just chant him down, and as tourists come out and see it, they burn him down too, and then they go home. Everybody drinks some rum.
They actually banned burning the Mr. Harding a while ago, because I guess it was a bit contentious. It was a bit contentious, I guess, in their eyes. But you bring it. I don't want to take in this direction, but I just need to mention it. You brought up the whole topic of tourism, and it irks me. I see somebody, I say it on Twitter, I feel the same way. It's like this in my way, it's like this colonization. Like these tourists come down to the islands, and it's so nice to have these little black boys and girls serving you, and it's like, I can show you the best bits of the island. You don't go there, that's a bad part of the island. You know what I mean? I'm just like, some of the things I hear the people who work in that sector, what they tell me, some of these things that these people expect of them or say to them, and you just gotta take it like, all right, it's fine. I like, bro, this gotta be a different world though. Like, I respect them. I don't know if I could deal with the whole, like, anytime you want something, sir, mom, call me. I just feel wrong about it in my core, and I know that means something. It don't just come from me existing the way I do now. It's from me knowing the history, how this got to the point where it is, why it continues. Nah, but it's rubbing wrong.
And you see again, it's about how we share in the land, it's how we share in the beach, which part is local, how much is my cut as a local, and how much is your cut as a foreigner, and which side of the beach. But the other thing is, I wanted to let you know that we here in St. Vincent have a resort called Plantation House. It has recently been refurbished, and if you want to go into the genetics of the person who's running the project, I'm sure it will reveal to be Caucasian. And I just wanted to say that to go into the biggest issue we have right now in Vinci, which is the biggest example of colonial power, which is the fact that, yeah, about 20, brand new. See she this song?
Yes.
Right?
Here we
So
go.
in comparison to Barbados, you guys are way more progressive, right? But then this is the challenge, right? Because this is the bread and butter. This is what we're living for. This is what's keeping the people in the hotels doing as the people are saying. The challenge is, right? This is mine. This is my money, right?
Yeah.
I own this, right? This is my value. This is how I bought this computer to have this conversation with you, right? This is my money. This is how I guess, this is my freedom, right?
Mhm.
The challenge is, if I take this woman's face off of this piece of paper, the resources that my country have at the moment is not going to allow me to have money that has this value.
Hmm.
So we have to continue to maintain this psychotic relationship. It's like Rihanna sing about it, right?
That's crazy. I
It's
mean,
like a bad.
you know,
Yeah.
I never even considered that point. For me, the Beijing dollar, seeing the faces on the Beijing dollar is so normal, and it just feels natural. Like, these are Bajans, these are people that do things to the country. They're on the dollar. They need $20, $50, whatever. But then, like, when I see you hold that bill, my first question, I mean, it was a nice looking like bill there. But then my second question is like, but with the queen on it though, like I understand, like,
Is her money?
One
yeah, but
point.
it like
Maybe Janika.
No, I would just
yeah.
wanted to read something that someone's viewing said, because it ties in so closely with what you guys are discussing right now. They said the apologetic response you just mentioned, which was when I was talking about the Ministry of Culture, could also be linked to how dependent our countries are on international funding and other forms of aid. Appeasing donors and
There you go.
international allies may be more important than the needs and interests of locals. Thanks for that, Maxine.
you know,
Yeah.
it's funny you brought that up as well, because it was one of the discussions we had. Um, and he started in a meeting. He started talking about the fact that like we gotta be so cognizant of what we do and how it affects certain things. So he's like, Bridgetown is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and so you have to take these things into consideration when doing X, Y, Z. And I'm just like, dog, I spent the last however long studying these things. I understand what you're talking about, and so on, right? My point of contention when it comes to those international treaties and laws and so on is that at some point it will always clash with the local perspective. And you first and foremost have to your people who elected you. The international arena did not elect you. I understand that, yes, you've signed on to treaties which may be bound to certain things. But when you come back to Barbadians and you say, if this is what he's saying, well, yeah, I know you want to get rid of Lord Nelson, but we kind of need it to make this a UNESCO World Heritage Site so that people can come and we have our tourist attractions. So just be cool with it, you know what I mean? You believe you me, the next election you're gonna be gone. And when you want to know why people get so upset over things, is because we elect you. Like the current government in their manifesto, they spoke of this new national consciousness for Barbados, how we need to, have a direction going forward as a people. And you get into power now, and this is exactly what you were talking about. Exactly, it's the most perfect opportunity for you to show what you're talking about. I know it's like you want to drag your feet, but yeah, just be cool, people. Let me talk about it. Process. I know as well as you do that 9 months down the road, hurricane can come, something can occur, it can be whatever it is, and you can want me forget about this because of X, Y, Z. And I let it happen though. Like, I just feel as though it has its place, it has its time, and none of the two of them are right now. Because whatever you do, and like I said, don't destroy the statue, but whatever you do, you're not doing it to appease outside people. You're doing it to appease the people who live, the people who die here, the people who sweat, and that got to be the first protocol for any politician. Right? That's how I feel.
Part
Bro,
of me
what?
wonders if if our thoughts are imagined, as in the foreigners don't really care what we do with the statues and if you take a face off of a bill. Do they really care, or is it in our mind that, oh,
Also,
massa want this so?
I can't imagine that if somebody take a sledgehammer and lick off. Sorry to get real Beijing. I can't imagine if somebody take a sledgehammer and knock off Nelson head tomorrow, that the UN or UNESCO gonna message somebody and be like, yeah, this is an act of cultural. I can't imagine it. I hear what they're saying, but I mean, come on, man. Seriously.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is imagined just because of that mental slavery that we've inherited from way back when. We don't
This
want
this
to.
is how it's done. That is the way for do it. I saw you just done. Just no other way for do it.
Just
Yeah,
do
we
it.
just don't want to ruffle any imagined feathers.
I mean, yeah.
Um,
Go on. Go on. It's fine.
so now to go back to the US. I know Jan had no, Akley had said the Caribbean is a majority black region. Now I know me personally two things. One, when this whole George Floyd protest happened, a minute to really understand why, not why police brutality is such a big deal, but really and truly understand why Black Americans feel the way they do about existing in the United States. I mean, it's easy for us in the Caribbean. I mean, we have life good. We don't worry about, police pulling us over. Or if they do pull us over, we don't worry about them pulling out something and shooting us. We don't live
Not
with
for the
that
color of our
fear. We
skin.
I,
Not for the color of our
I,
Uh,
I,
skin.
uh,
I,
based on the color person. We don't worry. We don't
my,
worry about somebody saying, "Oh, watch you, you're black. You can't come in here. What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here." You're doing this anyway. That's a different thing. We generally don't have those issues. So for me, when these protests erupted, I was like, they really have to do all these things? And then I was like, well,
my,
it's unfair for me with my comfortable existence in the Caribbean to really and truly judge these people based on what they've been living their whole lives. And a part of me understands because of it why Black Americans, I refuse to say the term African American because that's a whole other discussion there. Why Black Americans feel the way they do about Caribbean Americans, Caribbean people, West Indians, and African natives, persons from the continent. And I've seen it. I think I read it. I think Issa Rae in her book Awkward Black Girl said something about Caribbean natives and Africans thinking that they're better than Black Americans. And I understand why they feel that way because maybe our aloofness and our nonchalance towards what they experience and what they go through, maybe that's how it translates into us feeling that we're better than them. So, guys, thoughts on Caribbean blackness versus American blackness, blackness in Europe, and blackness outside of the continent of Africa?
okay. I just want to like go with
go on,
it.
go on, go on, go on.
So Caribbean blackness, right? Remember I was saying about the relationship between the land and freedom. So it creates an interesting mix wherever you are. In the US there is lots of land, but the land is controlled by white people, right? Majority of it. And there isn't much places for black people to go to express their freedom in America. So they have to assimilate and be a part of that process and play the roles that they're allowed to play. So I think that's my first perspective looking at that. In the Caribbean now, like we had to learn to live with white people in a different way, like because it's smaller. So the synchronization that happened I guess in a more diverse way. So you grow up and you might have like I have a brother who's white according to Vinci terms. He's a red man, and And it's just because of how the families came together, you know. You would have different shades and tones and all kind of people mix up in Vinci. And you might say we don't notice color, but we do, because we still point towards the whiter features as the features of beauty. You know, like, oh, your nose look pretty, boy. You have a white person. Oh God, what that chin there? Yeah, yeah. That's what they start telling the babies when they're born. So I just given you context of the two. The other thing that was very interesting for me in my whole journey of understanding Black in general was I had the opportunity to go to Ghana, and when I got there, you know, like, I'm a guy from St. Vincent, I'm a Rasta man. I obviously thought I was in the, you know, the motherland, and but the more time I spent there, the more I realized that I was not African. I was not African like the Africans who were there. And I mean, it so happened that the thing I was doing too, I was working on a film, and the film was about, I guess, the birth of Pan-Africanism. And through the journey of, you know, developing a script and researching and all of that, I got to understand that Pan-Africanism really started in the Caribbean. Like the idea of a united diasporic Africa, which is America, Caribbean, Blackness united in a global way, started in Trinidad by a lawyer called, you know, Henry Sylvester Williams. And the more I went into researching him, you know, I met these other guys, you know, like Ciela James and George Padmo. And you go into these guys' stories and you realize that these guys, when Ghana became independent, George Padmo was one of the guys who was a lawyer from Trinidad who went to help them rewrite the constitution. You know, so a guy like him wouldn't be the front page of history, but he's a utilitarian, he's a mover, he was putting people together, and his story started in Trinidad. And I wanted to say that to say not because one is better than the other. I just wanted to point out how I see each as different and unique in its own way. And it's just about journeys, you know. At the end of the day, every Black race across the planet aspires to be Black American, because it's the closest thing to modern day economic freedom, you know, and because of the marketing machinery that's tied around it. Well, maybe before now, before COVID and before this movement, everybody wanted to go to America, but now now it's different. Now we want to, you know, try to build up our nations and have these, you know, now it's different. So I wouldn't say that, you know, we're better in any way. I would just say that we had a different colonial experience, and what grew out of that is diverse. And if anything, we need to just wield the power that we have right now, because we're so like huge, you know, like we're so huge and we're so connected. And if we wanted to, we could organize, we could bring back Marcus Garvey in a big way right now, you know, with the internet. Like, we could really bring it back and make it work. But all the way know that's a challenge with our people working together.
And you want to jump in, or you want me to go ahead?
No, go ahead, Alex. Go ahead.
Okay. You know, the Black Caribbean people, Black Americans, or as you know, they call African Americans, and, you know, Black Europeans, whoever the case may be. It's always an interesting discussion, because it's almost like if we end up being at each other's throats about the differences we all possess as opposed to similarities. And, you know, having studied our history, both in the informal and informal ways, I just see this as a continuation of exactly what colonialists wanted. In fighting, you fight amongst each other, whether it's because of the color of your skin, whether it's because of geography, as opposed to genealogy, whatever it is, continue to fight amongst each other. You can never, ever get, you know, to where you want to be.
Organized, yeah.
Right, and it's like, you know, when I see like Black Americans, Caribbean people, let me just consider that triangle there. Africa, Black Caribbean people, Americans. We all were touched by the same issue of colonialism, but we were all touched in a different societies were pillaged and so on, so they had to move to the Caribbean. Whether it is because like you're moving to the States and they're in a white majority country now, or even Black Europeans, whether it's you go and you're in Europe and you're existing in a space that never really saw the ongoings of slavery, but just the end product, is that you all get touched by it a different way. And so you all experience it in a different way. So you may, for example, in America, when I go to America, I am not an African American as a major, as a Caribbean man. but I know the color of my skin. So if the police pull me over, I still thinking like, yo, this man ain't gonna answer part from it from Christchurch. This man is saying I ask no questions. I ask no questions. And so, in that moment of like, fear and everything, I still exist in the same space that a Black American exists. If a Black American comes to the Caribbean, my man let me up on the beach, nobody gonna look at the man and be like, okay, this man hate me. You gonna assume the man's a patron? Tell the man assume. So it's like the space exists really dictates how it is you relate to the whole experience, like, racism and so on. I think for us is like we just need to understand that yes, we exist in different spaces geographically, but we all are one people. We all have similarities. When I was in Australia, for example, I legit could not find no Caribbean people at one point. Couldn't find none. My school has 60,000 people, and I'm pretty sure that I was the only Caribbean man there. And the only Caribbean people I found is like, I can show you out. So I had met Zach from Antigua. Zach was like, yo, this girl that lived there, and he like starting out with she, then she introduced me to more Caribbean people. And the only Black people I met with outside of that were Africans. And when we had some discussions, they may say a word like, we had this whole discussion about the word susu. Like, everybody knows susu. So I hear somebody say something susu. I was like, you just said? And he's like, susu. But yeah, I was like, but we just say that in Barbados though. And I was like, you serious? I was like, yeah, dog. So it's like, you was just like, wait. You mean tell me that even though to be fair, I tell them from Barbados, some of them was like, dog, I know what that is. That's the honest truth. But we got similarities. We got so many connections. And I know that if you go to the US, then you got similarities and connections like that. Same thing for all of us around the place. So I think it's the same part of the whole discussion of, are you ready to have those tough discussions and to, in a sense, burn down the house you live in to move forward into a new chapter? I think if we actually understand that and we do that, then the things that we see as differences, we can realize are more or less similarities. And we could chart that path forward and stop this whole fighting about Caribbean people feel better than we, but want to live in islands. And then the Africans like, it's funny to see on Twitter. I just can't deal with it.
It's interesting. That's the reason why racial inequality continues to prevail in the US, because even though, let's say, at least a third of white Americans believe that racism is wrong, discrimination is wrong, blah, 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 they don't want to give up their comforts. It benefits me. I'm not going to give up my comfort. So, yeah, it's bad,
but yeah, that's tough, but, ciao.
I just had another point there about Africans versus Caribbean versus Black Americans, and so the point was to explore it in terms of state power, of how you wield state power, or who's allowed in terms of the color of the body, and if the body is melanated or not. And you have it in Africa, you have it in the Caribbean. Africa is sometimes confusing because there's things like Rwanda, where there was melanated body versus melanated body, and what
South
that
Africa.
means. Yeah, and then you get the backstory and you realize, well, it was motivated by not melanated bodies for economic means.
Oh yes.
So that confuses me. Then when you come to the Caribbean now, then you have melanated bodies, but they exist. The melanated bodies allowed to wield state power, allowed to have your individualism and your national interests, because you're democratic, but you operate within the housing of a neo-colonial framework that is still about oppressing melanated bodies. Mm-hmm. And then you go to America, where there is no state power for the Black guy. No, you could get some economic power, you could get some dough, but no state power. And when you finally get a Black guy, a melanated body in the state power infrastructure, he's not to disrespect anybody, but he comes across like an Uncle Tom, and you're not really sure about his motives and if he really represents what he represents, I mean, I'm talking about Obama because that's yeah, I just saying, because I don't know if I'm like stepping on shells or if you guys are like, is he dissing Obama? But that's what I'm saying, He was the only example of a Black guy within that structure, but then the structure you saw his blackness come out, but to benefit him, playing ball, he's cool, he's hip, but when it comes to flying the drones and blowing up Palestine and all these crazy places, that doesn't
That's
sound like the
a
same Obama.
whole other
That's the
discussion.
white
That's the
infrastructure.
system.
So then,
Yep.
yeah. So then it's like, so maybe that's the difference between the Caribbean and the African. The Caribbean person has more self-determination, in my opinion, in terms of like what we can do with our nations. Like we could nationalize things, we could fix, like we could decide where the nation is going. In a kind of a
Yeah.
way, I think the Caribbean is the future in terms of like politics, economics, and people in general, because it's such a crazy mix, and it's constantly evolving. The only challenge is our relationship to capital,
Mm.
because that's what keeps neocolonialism happening. But
I, I,
we
I,
we we are actually further ahead than everybody else.
I think just a very small point, but I think a major part of that whole discussion as well is the whole point of well, what CARICOM in my mind really should be, because it's like you have a collection of islands that we all have so many similarities and we all have so many struggles together, individually and collectively. And it's like if we can just, you know,
If we
I don't
can
want to bring
just
up,
get it together.
Oh
I don't
no.
want to bring up Leah, I don't want to bring
Oh
up
no no no.
Tomuda. I just saying that's just an example of, this and then I am an expert, but this and then that like rocket science, this and then that nobody never figured out before. Like farms, if you all get this thing, regional travel and everything working the way it should, so many of your problems will be resolved or could be easy to resolve. And it's like, just drawing us back to the whole Nelson discussion with statue. We used to always have discussions about should we move away to being a republic, should we get rid of the queen as a state, et cetera, et cetera. All perfectly legitimate discussions. I'm like, if we can't even understand the lowest hanging fruit of this statue, what it symbolizes, how we can have discussions about changing the legislature, how we have discussions about becoming a republic, we can't even move a statue.
Yeah.
That's physical brick and mortar, you can't even do it. So I'm like, for us, we have an opportunity to make something work and become, in my opinion, one of the premier destinations for not just Black people around the world. I think we might be almost there already, but one of the greatest think tanks for Black people, in the sense that you have people who see the Caribbean. People there are so forward thinking that they're able to move as a collective and do things as a group, as a collective, to benefit everybody and benefit themselves as countries. But for some reason, CARICOM doesn't work, and we don't go and get into that whole discussion now. So I just want to point that point.
Can I respond to you real quick, because this is the other thing, right? This is the other thing that we encounter. It's like, there are these things that are like, it's hard to come to terms with the fact that you're cliche. Like I'm a cliche. I am a Rastaman. I think left wing, and I want to get rid of Nelson. I'm a cliche, right?
Yeah.
But it's so interesting, because what do you say about the fact that the conversation about a federal Caribbean started 50 something years ago, and it was put down, and now we're trying to bring it back with CARICOM. It's like you're rebranding the same thing in another way, but this was 50 years ago. Before European Union, it would have been the future, the future, but it didn't work out. And I wonder if it was sabotage or what it was. Then the other thing is voices like Walter Rodney. Like this whole conversation that we are having is literally textbook, man. Like you could read his book and say, oh, that's why I think what I'm thinking. Yeah. And then you realize, oh, these are not my ideas. These are ideas that came from the space that I picked up over the years. These are not my ideas for real. So it's like, how do you continue, like meeting, being halfway and not getting to pick the real fruit? It's like how do we get there to this idealistic place where we're fine, because we just keep having waves, waves, and we etch away a bit of freedom, and and I guess that's what it is. You etch out some, then we back again, and we try to etch out some more. But
let me ask you two questions.
How far are we getting?
As I can. The first one, if it was sabotage or not, I ain't gonna call it sabotage or whatever the case may be. I would simply say that I think in the space that we were on a great trajectory, but due to internal and external forces, we weren't ready. And I didn't feel bad saying that. We just weren't ready as a group of islands, a group of countries coming up. That it would have been lovely to have it going on at that time. But after that whole generation, the federation went away, we started to move back to a more like nationalistic, kind of like internal. Let me make sure Barbados fine. Let me make sure Trinidad fine. Make sure everybody fine first. People, like, things don't go in like progressive steps as type of thing. So then you just take a step back, you gotta take 2 steps forward after that. The point we at right now, right? The whole thing, like you're saying, in terms of like what Walton Rodney would have written and so on. I see it more as a progression because like when he wrote that book, right? And we already booked, like I got it in PDF if anybody wants, things you should read. Like his ideas are not the most comfortable and widely accepted things. There were a majority of people that would have read that and be like, boy, that's this thing can get you, boy, I ain't know we can with this. That's our way, that's true. But the seeds that Walter Rodney and other people around the Caribbean planted, right? You're starting to see those seeds not just germinate with us, but in the previous, like right now in Barbados, we have some leaders, some ministers who they're not in their 50s, 60s, so they're not from that generation, but in their 30s and early 40s. And a lot of what they say is things that I would be like, yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. And then I got this generation, like us and the ones coming below us, that we slowly moving away from the ideas that would have been the norm during Walter Rodney time and the ideas that would have been, accepted to the ones that he's talking about, the things he's seeing, the things that should occur, shouldn't occur. Are we getting there? But it's just about making sure that whatever happens, like when we sit down here talking and the ones viewing, when we get in positions of power, the question is, are you going to continue to do what was done? Are you going to put your money where your mouth is? Well, you know should happen. What like the things we learn, whether it's from like Sierra James, France, Fan, all the books we read, all the things we go out hearing. What you can do with that knowledge, know that you got it. You got the opportunity to have it. You don't have to fight for it. You read it, you could like I said, I got how you were under the Africa in PDF. I go and read it every time I want. I don't gotta go to a library. I don't gotta hope that somebody gives me the book, lend me it. I got this information accessible. And so all that information now inside my brain, what I can do with it. And we got the perfect opportunity, like platforms like this, like discussions we can have even afterwards. All these are things that I think can lead us to, I don't want to call it the promised land, but can lead us towards the point where we can really start making change instead of just talking about it. So that's how I feel on that particular one.
So I have a point, 2 points actually. One, I think the whole issue with Caribbean Federation is a misplaced sense of independence, per se. We think that we are more than we actually are. We fail to realize that separately we achieve much less than we can achieve together. And 2, I think Liat's current position is a perfect representation of where we are as CARICOM. I think Liat's failures, struggles, issues is a full representation of the current state of CARICOM. And another thing, I had a discussion with a doctor, he's actually the agent here in the TCI, and he said to me that despite things of the Federation back then, what we've come to see is that despite the politicians, despite the political processes, we've had integration to some extent. And I had to agree with that because personally, and I think Yui, come hell or high water, I would sing Yui's praises because on any given day, I could pick up the phone and reach out to somebody from nearly every single Caribbean island. And we've had integration, particularly as it relates to our generations. So the question is, I don't know if it's, and I saw a comment saying that as we get older, Trident's Rome says as we get older, persons become more conservative, so it's not a safeguard. So I'm wondering if our thinkings would change as we get older. And this is an important point because we see the likes of Andrew Holness in Jamaica, who's a relatively young guy, as a prime minister, and over the past 2-3 years, the spotlight has been on Jamaica in relation to its perceived anti-CARICOM dealings in relation to the US. So, I mean, we have a lot to think about. We as youth, we have these, what some might say are grandiose ideas, but is it that they are grandiose, or maybe when we get to the road, we're like, oh, we don't wanna cause any waves, we don't wanna ruffle any feathers. Is it that? I don't
Feathers
know. I
gotta
don't know
get
what
ruffled.
you guys think.
Feathers gotta get ruffled, man. That's the unfortunate truth. That's what I'm saying.
I
I
agree.
mean, you've seen it. You've seen in the political movements, like Marxism, communism. You've seen that the leaders who motivated the people, got the power from the masses. You saw that they eventually went into the big houses and became the new bourgeois. The vanguard became the bourgeois. So I ask myself this too, like when things good and when everything is fine and you've met all your goals, safety and psychological, and you're ready to self-actualize. Does this mean I too am going to forget about building and just be comfortable with what I've amassed? Like I ask myself this all the time just to figure out what's really going on and what are the limits of progress because of humanity, because it has to be because of humanity, because it's like corruption eventually takes over and you think about your belly and not about progressing. So I don't know, it's a tough question. I would love to get an answer so that I too could not make the same mistakes lots of our leaders have made. Not that I
Well,
intend to be a leader, yeah? Not that whatever.
I, I can say something that's it's probably controversial in a sense, but I can say it nonetheless. Listen, we all see how things work out in a particular group of political mindsets. It's political systems that we see exist in the world today. So whether it's democracy, whether it's communism, whatever the case may be, we see how some of them go and how some of them don't go. And I think, it's nothing revolutionary per se to think about. But if you look at the Caribbean, all of our countries almost more or less exist in the same kind of like, political sphere. There may be slight variations, but we all do well, that's do the same thing. Same type of constitutions, it came from England, that's how it's written, blah, blah, blah. Like we all more or less have those things. And throughout time, I don't know if it's the case for everyone, but like in Barbados, we have two political parties, these and these. No matter what happened, I have all these fringe parties come, but you can do these and these and these. These can get for two terms, they can do what they want to do, and then people be like, are you doing nonsense? So we get these. And then these can go that direction, do what they want to do for 2 terms, and then we can just keep doing this. So and it's like, we always have this discussion of, all right, man, when this person gets power, man, they're different though. They can do things differently. And then get power and it's be like, yeah, nah, the same way I thought you was gonna be like. And so I think it's not even just a discussion about what we're gonna do in this system. It may be a discussion that the system needs to change. And once again, that's a very big and difficult discussion to even contemplate because
Oh, yes.
you can ask yourself questions like change what, change how, who changing it, who let it change. You know what I mean? But I mean, I can't believe that 50 years from now, Barbados can still exist where there's literally just the BLP and the DLP, and we doing this the next 50 years back and forth. Like, it's blown my mind to think about it because, like, the older generation will be like, I could never vote for that party, boy. No, boy. When I was growing up, I was like, 5 years growing up 50 years ago, though, like, no offense. You know what I mean? Like, things change. The politics of parties change. The purpose of parties change. And so we can't do this whole tribalism back and forth kind of thing that going forward. So, I mean, I just feel it may not be a discussion, as I said, of what do we do. We might just have a discussion of the fact this system needs to change, how we changing it to what. Let me start this discussion. I know that might be controversial, but that's just how I feel.
So Heidi, you said maybe we are less than we think we actually are. The first time I went to London, I saw exactly what we were capable of, because you saw how a thing built itself up from our resources. You saw how powerful we could potentially be. But like I say, it feels like sabotage because the market, which is our market, which is them, they don't want to buy on our terms, they want to buy on their terms. So even if we wanted to continue to export sugar and cotton, we couldn't export sugar and cotton like they used to. We'll have to negotiate in a different way. So it feels like it's rigged from the beginning. And I see that it's 4 o'clock, so this is my last bit. So and in relation to Alex, you know, like I too am dreaming about something new, something that doesn't exist, something unlike anything that we know so far. And I don't know what it is, but you know, with people like you, I feel, you know, we might wake up one day and say, oh crap, this is what we were dreaming of, this new thing. So let's dream together, brother.
Sure, for sure.
Oh, sorry, that was me. Goodbye.
I would just also wrap up by saying that Akley mentioned something about the Caribbean being the future, and I immediately thought of two things. One, someone made it clear to me that actually the progress, it might seem like not a lot to us, but the progress that CARICOM made in the space of time with the population, the size of people, is exponentially greater than the EU, and what the EU accomplished and how long it took them to accomplish the same thing. So that was one thing, because I never thought about it like that before, because, you know, we tend to think like, oh, you know, CARICOM needs so much work, which it does, don't get me wrong, I'm the biggest proponent of that, but it's also interesting to think about how much we achieve in the space that we have with CARICOM. And two, I also thought about Haiti, and Haiti being the first black republic in the world, and the change that led. And so it's really, really interesting to think about things in that light, with the Caribbean being the future, as you say, with cultures and races eventually merging, clashing, learning how to govern themselves. And also on the point of what Alex said, maybe as a possibility that the next system is born again, once again, out of us, in our unique position as the Caribbean people. That's what I have to say.
Mulatto power.
I just want my point.
Go ahead, Alex.
I just so sorry, John Bernard Haiti in the anchor. I don't want to talk about Haiti so much. That man do, boy. My heart is. Let me just continue. Go talk about Haiti for the next like 30 minutes and how I feel about that. But yeah.
We feel you on Haiti. We definitely feel you on what Haiti has gone through and continues to go through.
Yep.
But you know, this is an excellent discussion. It's always good to have spaces to have open and honest conversations. You guys know your stuff, you know what you're talking about. You know, these are conversations that we need to have. Hopefully, continue to have them. Hopefully that when our time comes to make a difference, take the reins, that we don't forget, you know, what our thoughts were as, I think we're still relatively young people. I hope that we teach the ones coming up behind us, the Gen Zers, never mind the continue hating on millennials, but that's a whole other topic. But yeah, St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Barbados, we have similar existences. And it was great having you here, Alex. I know you didn't even hesitate when Jan asked you, so thank you.
Definitely an honor to be here, man.
And same with Akley. Akley was ready to go. So thank you, Akley.
Yeah, man.
And there is lightning and thunder behind me. So
that's the spirits, because we're ripping up the space right now.
We shake the table a bit too much today.
Yeah, we're shaking it. That's the future calling out there.
Oh my gosh.
We're on Twitter as Wine and Chat 1, and if you join late and you miss most of the discussion, not to worry. You can watch a replay on YouTube, and you can watch a replay on our Twitter as well, and on my Facebook.
We're not sure when the installment will be. Given these times, people are traveling or trying to travel, or trying to move between different territories. So we'll be back when we're back, and you'll hear from us. So thanks again, guys.
No
Thanks
worries.
everyone
Thanks for
for
having me.
watching.
Blessings.
Thanks. Thank you. Have a good